This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm here with a longer video than usual. This one has been in the works for a long time. I've been waiting to finish this updated lineup of my characters from my comic that I'm currently working on, that I have not started publishing yet, by the way. Question I get a lot, but yeah, it hasn't quite began just yet, but very close. Anyways, I'm including this clip in the beginning, which is a failed attempt to finish this lineup from several months ago. As some of you know, I have posted a video with the first part of this lineup quite some time ago, which included one of the main characters, Noelle, and her group of friends, which are all kind of situated on the left-hand side of the canvas. And I wanted to finish up this lineup with just drawing the other three main characters and having that good to go. So there's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about in this video, and I will just make my way through the points slowly but surely. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to mention is that last week, something bad happened. I was in kind of a tough situation, and yeah, I couldn't publish a video in the end. I really wanted to kind of stick to the schedule, but I just couldn't. If some of you guys are on my Discord or my Instagram, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. Honestly, I'm just dealing with it and trying not to linger. And yeah, I'm just back, trying to get back to the regular schedule of things, and back on track with my projects and such. And on that note, I also wanted to mention that the tragedy kind of struck in the middle of me planning a shop update, which was kind of small, but it was something I was really looking forward to, and I wasn't really quite able to advertise the shop or do any of that properly, unfortunately. But I just wanted to mention here real quick that I am having a really big shop sale right now that it's 33% off of my previous art book called Milk of Melancholy. It's going to be on sale for a little longer, probably a couple more weeks. And there's a 20% off sale happening with the rest of the items, most of them just excluding the couple of new ones that are fresh off the printing press. Anyways, so yeah, I just wanted to mention that, guys. If you're interested in getting something from my shop right now, it's a good time to check it out, and the coupon code will be displayed on the top banner of the shop, so please take a look if you want. Anyways, okay, so let's get to the video. First of all, you might be thinking, well, you might not be thinking, but I certainly thought, dude, you have drawn your characters a million times. Why are you wasting your time to do it all over again and over again and over again? So I just wanted to let you guys know the reason why I wanted to finish up this lineup, and just why I did it in the first place, even despite the fact that, I've drawn these characters about a million times over the past 15 years, and they have not really changed in appearance all that much. So the main reason for doing this lineup, I want to call it style distillation. So I know it's a convoluted term I just came up with on the spot here. But essentially what I was trying to do is to kind of really hammer down the stylistic approach that I want to take in regards to this comic. It's been a long time coming, and, that's an aspect of it that I don't want to take lightly, because I want it to be consistent, and I want the style to be something that I'm truly really happy with and really proud of. And it's kind of like, for someone who's been drawing for so long and doing so much different freelance and having to switch back and forth between styles quite a bit, I have found myself in a place where if I'm going to do a new project, I actually have to decide on the style beforehand, instead of just jumping into it and dealing with whatever comes out, which is what I thought I was going to do at first, but it just wasn't that simple. What I usually, when I start drawing, I won't sweat it too hard, and the results are typically all right. But I have been kind of plagued by the feeling for the past few years that it's never just quite exactly what I'm looking for. And there's always something that I find a little dissatisfying from the end result. Not overall, but generally speaking, from the impression. It's just not the impression that I'm trying to make with my art. And it is pretty much all because of the curse of client work, which I did a lot of in the past couple of years, up until maybe 6 months ago or so, or like 4 months ago. I was doing a ton of client work, and I just wanted to dive into this for a little bit. I'm sure this is something that I've talked about before, but generally the gist of most of the client work that I've done in the past few years involved character designs and costume designs for a very specific audience in mind, which is young girls. And the style that was requested / expected for these situations was kind of Disney-esque, like at least in that general direction, and the proportions were quite different. They were very doll-like proportions. In some cases I literally worked on doll packaging, so I just had to do illustrations of dolls, and the proportions were mostly like larger heads, more childlike bodies, with big eyes, like bigger facial features in general. So before I continue, I'm just going to tell you about this video sponsor for a minute. It is Squarespace, which is an all-in-one platform to create a professional and beautiful website for your online business. And I'm happy to say that I was able to do that with shocking ease when I tried it out for the first time last year. Squarespace is so easy to use, and having my portfolio in place now is just so psychologically satisfying. Every time I want to add a few pieces that are representative of my work, it takes seconds to upload them and rearrange them in my various galleries, which are also very easy to organize, by the way. Squarespace offers super easy integration of all other social media platforms as well, and every time I want to feature a YouTube video of mine on the main website page or tweak the visibility of my Instagram gallery, I can do it super quickly and easily without knowing anything about coding. If you still don't have a portfolio site, I really recommend that you try out Squarespace to put one together and see for yourself how easy it is. You can try it out for free. Simply head over to squarespace.com to get started, and once your site is done and ready to launch, you can head to squarespace.com/cosmicspectrumart and get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to the video. And yeah, I mean, one thing that I wanted to kind of explain and touch upon is just how difficult it can be to understand how your own perception of things gets skewed when you work on something for a long time, and how actually difficult it might be to fix your own perception. Because half the trouble is that, you know, I'll draw something and it seems all right, but then I'll sit on it, and a couple of weeks later I'll look back on it, and then I'll see just how exaggerated the proportions actually are, even though at the time it kind of seemed okay to me, you know. And all of this is 100% because just the sheer volume of work that I did for these other projects, which is, you know, nothing to complain about there, just talking about how kind of a battle and a journey it is to get back to finding the style that I actually am personally happy with, which is, you know, very specific. And I like very angular shapes, especially when it comes to digital art, and not everybody's looking for that. I've even had some instances in the past where I finished like a drawing, and then some of the feedback was like, oh, can you just like soften this and soften that and etc. So I had to do a bunch of paint overs just to like soften things. So yeah, my personal preferences are what they are, and the client is not always looking for that. Anyways, I digress. So yeah, it took quite a bit, but I am happy to say that I have been able to slowly find my way back to what I was looking for. And the reason why I went back to this lineup is because it was one of the only examples, or one of the clearest examples out of my recent art that did closely resemble, like, it was basically something that I was the happiest with out of anything else that I've created. Most of the art that I've made over the past few years has been traditional as well, and I do notice that my approach to the angularity is actually a very digital symptom of my art. I don't know why exactly. I guess like my traditional art still has a little bit of the angularity, but I am definitely more inclined to be bold in that respect when it comes to digital art, probably because I can afford to undo now and then and truly zero in on the precision of what shapes I'm looking for. And so, yeah, I wanted to also circle back kind of to the perception, how your perception or my perception of my own art is kind of a difficult thing to control, and how it takes time to fix. Like, it's not as easy as always looking at it and then immediately being able to tell exactly what should be different, etc. It's kind of like a searching process, and it takes some time. And sometimes it actually results in art block that lasts a while, or that can keep coming back now and again. And I mentioned this art block because for that reason, I included a little bit of footage at the beginning of this video that had me sketching out the first attempt to complete this lineup, which ended up being a complete flop that I just lost interest in and gave up. Yeah, so I wanted to explain why that happened. Actually, to some degree, I myself don't really know what it is that made me so unhappy with that first attempt of sketches, because I remember very clearly that at the time I was like, no, this is not working. For some reason, I just can't draw right now. Nothing is going right. I can't do it. And I just kind of gave up. I like set it aside and was working on other things instead. And it took me many months to come back finally last month to do this lineup again, and I just started from scratch. I didn't want to like even look at the old version, but once I finished and I looked back at the old version in order to show you guys the difference and how I approached it the first time versus now, I'm actually seeing how it wasn't so bad. Like, it wasn't as bad as I perceived it to be at the time. And frankly, I have no idea what even causes these things. Like, what causes this difference in perception? I don't know. I can't tell you. But yeah, on a brighter note, the second time around, it was actually a much more pleasant experience. It's never like super easy, and there are always things that will be slightly frustrating, but overall, I'm happy to say that the sketching process, which is most of the work, by the way, just the sketches, that's where everything kind of gets decided and hammered down, and that can be the most challenging part of the process for me. This time around, the sketching process went very smoothly, and I was able to get poses, the facial expressions, the shapes, everything that I'm happy with. And as you can see, I did include some screen footage, so part of the thing that made it a little bit easier for me to feel comfortable with diving back into working on my comic stuff is because from the years of doing so many difficult and like volume-wise quite intense freelance projects, being part of those things, I worked on my large 24 Pro CINTIQ screen to draw on, and I have come to associate it with work and with like hard work that required many hours. And anyways, again, not complaining, it's all good, but this relationship that I had with it, that had just like this intense work atmosphere around working on this big screen, was something that I realized a few months ago. And in order to combat that, I decided to try and work on my mobile setup at home. So it's kind of, look, it just never occurred to me because I figured, I have this laptop that I use to draw on the go when I need to, which doesn't really happen all that often, to be completely honest, but I have used it on occasion and it has been great. And I decided to just try to use the laptop instead, because the nature of the setup is quite different. It's a lot more compact. The screen is much smaller. It is an HD screen versus the 4K screen of my CINTIQ, and I did find that it alleviated a lot of the tension and like the pressure that I felt. So that is why the screen recording that you're looking at now is in like a bit of a different format. As you can see, like the UI of Photoshop is larger, etc. The explanation for that is just that the screen is much smaller, And I have spoken in a recent video about my discovery about how much of a difference the resolution of the screen makes when it comes to doing line art and such. I'm not gonna revisit that topic in this video, but it's something I talk about at length in one of my previous videos. So anyways, like I said, the process was a lot smoother, and thank God it was not giving me as much of a hard time as the previous attempt. And yeah, like I said, the previous attempt, once I actually looked at it all these months afterwards, I did realize that it wasn't even that bad. Like, I could have probably rolled with it on a different day if I was in a different mood. So just on that note, I wanted to mention that yeah, I know that everyone has very similar experiences when it comes to art. It has been kind of like this for the vast majority of my career, and I just wanted to reassure you guys, if some of you guys are maybe at the start of your journey or just dealing with art block frequently, you should know that it's something that you should try to get used to and just give it time and not try to battle it too hard. In my experience, when I try to battle it too hard, it gets too frustrating and it kind of feels redundant, but it always comes back. It's always temporary, and at the end of the day, you will always see improvement if you just push through and continue working on your stuff. And yeah, just make peace with the art block, man. It's not gonna go anywhere. Well, it will, but then it'll come back always, and it's something you just can't permanently get rid of. So yeah, it's in some ways art block is a friend, but anyways, I'm not gonna go too far in that direction. So yeah, like I said, there was a real-time chunk, which I'm glad I was able to capture, but for the rest of the process, I just recorded the screen because it has been a little bit difficult for me to get a lot of footage. Just feels like the camera hovering. I was dealing with so many psychological issues with art making during this couple of last months, so the footage of my hand is a little bit scarce, but I got the rest of it down, and I believe I sped it up about 1200%, so it's 12 times faster, because I did want to show you guys the entire process of this lineup without cutting out too many chunks, so that you can just see every step of the way very clearly, and hopefully you can find that useful. And on that note, I actually also wanted to mention that I have been able to get quite ahead of my schedule up until now, when things got crazy and really sad last week. But anyways, yeah, I did start my Patreon page, something I've been talking about on this channel for months. I have finally managed to get around to it, and so grateful to all of you guys who decided to become my patrons. It helped a lot, and I did find that the early access that you get on my Patreon is actually quite early, because I was working on this stuff a while back, maybe a whole month ago, and I was posting all my progress shots along the way. And yeah, so just so you guys know, if you are interested in getting more work in progress things, getting some thoughts, and just being part of the community that is supporting the creation of this comic, please check out my Patreon page, which I will link in my description. So moving on, there are some subtle changes that I made to the characters. One of the biggest things that I tweaked was the height differences. And I will actually include some back-to-back, comparison. I'll include a screen where I will just put the new lineup of the main characters next to the older one that I did a couple of years ago, just so you guys can see the clear difference of the updated decision making. But before I get to that, I just wanted to touch on one thing that I want to call it the issue that haunts me, but in reality I don't think it's a huge deal. But that issue is that all my characters are just too good looking. I don't know if that is a actual problem, but it is something that I've contemplated about now and then. And yeah, I don't know, it's kind of a weird one, because I will say that I do notice, when I watch shows, especially just the young adult shows, whatever, supernatural, similar themes and subject matter, slash audience, I suppose, I do really notice when the actors that are cast are just excessively good looking, and it almost becomes like kind of annoying. But it's something that I don't really understand how to address, because I just draw people and the faces that I prefer, and I don't know how to really explain that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It doesn't personally bother me, because obviously I find the faces that I draw beautiful, and that's the whole point, or at least that's half the point. The other point is trying to make them expressive, or as expressive as I can. And all in all, just to address that little bit of thing, it is something that I'm aware of, but it's not something I'm really willing to change, because I just don't see it as a huge problem. But anywho, so yeah, just getting that out of the way, I wanted to give you guys some thoughts on how I approached making the various decisions in this new lineup in regards to the posing and the slight variations in the uniform. And actually, one of the things that I updated slightly, I suppose, or expanded on in this new lineup is the uniform design for the academy that my characters attend. In my last attempt, it was pretty much the same as it was during my first attempt at this comic. Like, it was a very simple uniform, but this time around I wanted to add a jacket. And obviously this is not new, because I already included that stuff in my lineup with Noelle and her friends from those months ago, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But yeah, I will tell you guys about some of the decision making in the poses. So the first character I'm going to talk about is my main lady, Heijin. She's the main character. I've mentioned before that all 4 of these guys are the main characters, but if I had to pick one, it would most definitely be Heijin, which is the girl with the long black hair. I've been drawing her all the time for many years, as I'm sure many of you guys know. And so here are some of the decision or facts that have I guess supported my decisions. Anyways, so yeah, she's supposed to be shrouded in mystery, and that is the vibe that I was going for. You can't quite see her face, or her whole face. Her pose is closed off, and she has one of her hands in her pocket, which to me I see as she could be clutching something that's important in there. She could be hiding something, who knows? And she is turned away from the viewer, and her pose is not receptive or open or friendly at all. And it almost looks like she's kind of about to just walk away from the viewer. And as for her uniform choices, she has insisted on the longest skirt option available, because she is very old-fashioned in some ways and considers the most popular skirt length, like that of Noelle, Callie, and Astrid on the left over there, to be completely inappropriate and scandalous even. Her skirt length is actually custom ordered by Sock, who helped her procure her uniform, and she insisted that it has to go below the knees, which is something that they didn't even have but were, happy to make at request. And that's about it. So moving on to the next new addition is Sock, which I was very excited for him. I don't draw him very often. I used to a lot more often than I do in the last several years. He is a tough one. Like, he's a weird one to handle, because as far as the group dynamic goes, he's kind of the comic relief and just like the silly goose of the bunch. And by the bunch, I mean the main 4 characters, the main gang, right? I say he's a weird one because his appearance is supposed to be purposefully aloof, and he's trying way too hard to look cool and like casual a lot of the time. However, he's not entirely comfortable or super confident in a lot of ways, so he can come off as pretty awkward, and it is very difficult for me to capture that energy. And I was trying to capture it in this pose, and I actually think that it was not bad. I think this is probably one of the more one of the more successful attempts that I have made of him posing him so far. And as for the personal choices of his uniform, he loves the punk accessories and such, for the reasons of trying to look cool that I mentioned before. And as you can see, he just kind of looks like a slob, which he really is. I'm actually proud that I was able to make his hair look greasy for once, which it is. It's kind of a difficult thing to convey through an illustration, but anyways, the only thing that I could have added possibly was just some stains on the shirt here, but which would have totally checked out. But there are actually some secondary reasons as to why his clothes are always clean, which you will find out about in the comic. And lastly, I will talk about Fiona, which is the last person on the lineup over here. And Fiona is a boy, just in case there's any confusion there. So Theo here is basically the picture of deadpan indifference. He has gotten over the embarrassment of wearing clothes he doesn't want to wear a long time ago, back when he was still a little kid. He has pretty much resigned and succumbed to his family circumstances and is just going through the motions, which is why his pose is just standing there. Sometimes he'll have a bit of spare energy and crack a small polite smile, but on this occasion I decided to just go with his signature quiet desperation face, which is what it usually looks like. And yeah, his uniform choices are just about blending in and trying to look as normal as possible, quote-unquote normal as possible, including the standard issue shoes. He doesn't really accessorize, doesn't want to individualize his look at all, other than simply choosing a longer skirt just to ensure that he can wear his boxers in peace. And his jacket's a bit tight and he has on occasion contemplated getting a boy's uniform jacket just to make it easier to move. But his frame isn't super broad and masculine anyway, and the last thing he wants is to bring up that subject with his mother. And on days when he seriously doesn't want to deal with it, he just wears an oversized school cardigan, which is what I had him in the previous lineup. So that's about all the information that I jotted down here about my decision-making process when it comes to posing the characters. I find it so fun to pick the poses for my characters. It's that's one of the things that I actually love the most about comics, because there's so many subtleties. And I'm not saying that I'm like super good at it, but at least the way that I tend to judge these things is similar as I mentioned about drawing characters consistently. I just look at them and I judge based on gut feeling and just vibes whether they look like themselves or not. That's how I roll with poses. Sometimes things just don't feel right, and I look at them like it kind of looks like a character, but that's not really them. And that's sort of what I felt about in the previous lineup to some degree. And I'm actually just going to intercut here the two side-by-side images of the new versus the old lineup and tell you guys a couple of main things that stand out to me and why I'm so much happier with the new lineup and why I am 100% satisfied with how it turned out. So as you can see, in the old lineup, the proportions are quite different. It might not be super evident if you look at them separately, but side by side, it's very clear that generally speaking the proportions are a lot more childish in the previous lineup and kind of more doll-like, which is obviously a remnant of the fact that I was working so much on doll related things. Anyways, and the posing is not super, like, I'm not super happy with this posing, and I'll explain why. Like, for instance, Fiona's pose, okay, like, it's fine. And Noelle's pose is also fine. The version that I chose to paste into this compilation is that of her wearing the track uniform, or like the gym school uniform or whatever. I also had another version where she was wearing a skirt. I don't know. Anyways, actually, all of those versions you'll be able to check out in my new art book, Prism, that's coming out. I did include a lot of behind the scenes stuff there, so that's really exciting. But yeah, anyways, here she's wearing the school uniform and her pose is okay. It doesn't really say much. She's just kind of standing there. She looks vaguely happy, which is fine. Like, she can be really kind of pleasant generally, so the pose checks out, but it doesn't speak enough, I think, about her character. It doesn't really say much. And then Sok is the one that I was the least happy with in the old lineup, because to me he just looks like a douchebag. He just looks too like cool, or like trying to be cool, but like not in the goofy way that it's supposed to be, but more it's like he's taking himself too seriously. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like, these things sound so funny when I talk about them, because some people might be thinking like, oh my god, you're crazy, like you overthink this shit, which might be true, but I think it's all in the details, man. So yeah, I was not happy with his hair. It just looked kind of like really styled instead of the greasy, like messy look that I managed to finally capture in the updated version. And he looks like too hostile, which he actually can be pretty hostile a lot of the time, but in this particular case it just makes him look like he's just full of himself or something, which is not generally the vibe that you're supposed to get from this character. And his whole thing with the tie tucked into the pocket, like, I did draw him like that a few times in the first iteration of this comic, but now it just looks like some sort of weird fashion move in this particular drawing, which I also thought was just off. So yeah, in the pose itself, just like, I don't know, it's not good. Doesn't really look like him. He wouldn't just stand there like that. So yeah, those are some of the reasons. And I know it sounds kind of nuts, but anyways, moving on to Heijin here. Yeah, her pose is also completely arbitrary. It doesn't really say much. I mean, half her face is typically covered, so that's normal, but otherwise she's just kind of holding up her hair. I don't even know why I decided to pose her that way. I gotta say, there's no particular reason for that. I think it's just I didn't know what to do with her hand, and I didn't want to, or like with her arm, and I didn't want her to just simply be standing there. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I can say. And again, there's been a little bit of an update in the uniform, but overall, as you can see, these little things that I just spoke about, I mean, they do make a big difference. They make a big difference in terms of what you can kind of gather about a character from first glance. And that is precisely why I care about posing so much. And again, just to circle back to why I felt the need to draw this lineup over again, even though, as you can see, design-wise, the characters haven't changed all that much. Yeah, it was all about hammering down the style and hammering down, like, the feel of the character. Because the more that I can successfully pull that off, gives me confidence that I will be able to do it in the comic. And that's very necessary because, you know, it's a very long-term endeavor, and as many of you who are involved in comics will know, it's not an easy job, not an easy thing to do, especially when you're just trying to do it on your own without any sort of publishing situation or contracts or anything. So yeah, I really hope that this video was helpful to you guys, and I still haven't edited this part in the actual video, but I think I will just shrink these two images and put them on the screen so that I don't have to leave too much of the footage going in the background while anyways, whatever, I'll figure that out. But yeah, again, guys, thanks so much for your recent support. Thank you so much to everybody who's listening to this video who actually placed an order in my shop last week. It really means a lot. There's a reason why I did not really want to talk about what happened. I just want to kind of move on. It was very sad, and I'm still sad about it, but I actually have other problems as well, which I'm not gonna talk about in this video. But overall, things are fine. Everything is, you know, solvable, and I am getting back on track, and I hope you found this video useful and informative, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, everyone.